Hey YouTube, it's Nick, and today I'm actually taking you on location for our Haunted Places video. Today's location is going to be Cooch's Bridge, where I cover a little bit of history about the battlefield itself, as well as the Welsh Tract Church. Today's major story is going to be about Delaware's Headless Horseman. On September 3rd, 1777, Delaware engaged in its first and only battle in the American Revolution. This was the first time that the colonies flew the Stars and Stripes, and it's also the origin story for Delaware's Headless Horseman. Let's begin with a little bit of history. The initial engagement between the colonists and the British troops began on August 30th, roughly 2 miles south of Cooch's Bridge. The Americans were between 700 and 800 strong and were utilizing guerrilla techniques learned from the Native Americans, though they were severely outmanned and outgunned against the British and Hessian forces. There were about 350 Hessian soldiers that were coming from Glasgow, as well as about 1,100 British. Now during this time, they continued to be pushed further north until they reached Cooch's Bridge. Here, a hand-picked group of about 100 marksmen under General William Maxwell created an ambush in the dense forest. During the battle, several British and Hessian charges were repelled. However, the Americans began running low on ammunition and had to retreat due to the fact that the British and Hessians were starting to come after them with short swords as well as bayonets. The retreat caused the British to gain the territory and claim the property. In a show of power, several buildings were burned, and General Cornwallis used the Cooch's house as the headquarters for roughly a week so that his troops could regroup. Between 30 and 50 soldiers from each side were killed during this battle. However, if you look at the British records for everything, they flubbed their numbers because they wanted to look better to their superiors. So if you check out their records, they only have 3. And unfortunately, if you're looking at the colonists' records, you can't, because there was a barn fire where all of the records were stored and they were destroyed. So it's really hard for them to gauge exactly how many people from each side died during this battle. Now, those that were killed were buried in unmarked graves within the field, and unfortunately, that causes a lot of ghostly unrest. The battle itself was only about 7 hours long, and it took up a range of about 6 miles. Now, during this battle, the only people that had cannon fire were the British and Hessians. So there are 2 separate Headless Horseman stories. One of them I'm going to discuss now. So I may wind up having to come back to this location because it looks like somebody's here cutting the grass right now, and with social distancing going on, I really don't want to get in trouble for something. But the location that I'm at right now is the Welsh Tract Church. Now, the church that I'm going to show you really quick has a hole in the side of it, and that is from one of the 2 Delaware Headless Horseman myths. So this one is that a patriot named Charlie Miller was struck down, a cannonball came, hit his head off, and knocked it straight through the church. You can see his ghost on a horse on I-95. So I'm gonna show you the site really quick. That's pretty creepy. So right here you can see where the bricks are different pattern. That's where his head apparently went through with the cannonball. Church is from 1746, and according to the signpost out here, this is the oldest primitive Baptist church in America. Now that you've seen the church and you've seen the patterning that's changed, I'm going to take you guys over to the Cooch's Bridge, which actually is where most of the story comes from. The second story involves a Hessian soldier. Now, the Hessians and the British were the only ones that had cannons, so it was a case of friendly fire taking off the Hessian soldier's head. Now, he still roams looking for his head in Cooch's Bridge area. The only time you're going to see him, though, is on foggy, moonless nights, and you have to make sure that it is both foggy and moonless. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to be able to take you guys into the actual site, or if this is going to have to just be kind of a drive-by and then an explanation later on. But I'm going to take you past it and record and try and get as much information in as I can and see if I can have anywhere to pull over. See this little divot here? This is Cooch's Bridge. Okay, so obviously it's daytime, so we're probably not going to get any sort of activity. But I wanted to take you guys to this portion of the battlefield and show you a couple of the signs, things that are not here, and then take you over to where the actual bridge is, which is in that direction. The second reason that this area is so creepy, at least to me, apart from the mass grave that's there, is that this area has a lot of horrible car accidents, and you can imagine the amount of ghostly unrest that comes from that as well. Just while I was going to high school, I believe 2 people were killed in car accidents there. So you're always hearing stories about car crashes and terrible accidents on that road, which could be stemmed from both the bad luck of the ghostly encounters as well as just very poorly bad lit, constantly flooded area. There are actually a ton of books relating to this specific area. One of my favorite authors actually wrote and covered a piece about this area. His name is Ed Econowitz. He's from Fair Hill, Maryland, and he has a series called Spirits by the Bays. I have a couple of the books right here. I'll have to double check which book this specific story is in. Now, ghostly apparition-wise, apart from seeing the Headless Horseman in this area, you are also able to encounter some of the British soldiers, Hessian soldiers, and American colonists. Now, their stories are kind of fewer, far between. However, there are some really great resources online. There aren't any exact stories, unfortunately, otherwise I would share them in this video, but I really wanted to cover at least the Delaware Headless Horseman, and that was all of the information I had for you guys today. Alright guys, now it's that time of the video where I spiel about all of my links and also remind you that the best way for me to make content that you guys want to see is to make sure you comment down below. I recently held a poll on my Twitter to find out exactly which series you guys wanted me to touch back on, and it was a resounding haunted places, and I'm going to continue going to these. I actually talked to Dan and I was like, alright, we really need to plan out the next haunted place that we want to go to when we can travel again, and we are going to go to New Hope and cover that area. So the next time that we're actually staying in an area and covering it is going to be New Hope, Pennsylvania. Apart from that, like the local places around here I can cover. There's some really interesting stories about Lum's Pond in Delaware, and I can check that out for you guys. Really hope you enjoyed this video, and as I said before, please, please, please comment, like, share, subscribe, and make sure that you are telling me exactly what you want to see next. Talk to you guys soon.